Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Biochar Technology Podcast from the International Biochar Initiative. My name is Akio Enders, and today we're joined by Helmut Gerber and Robert Kovac of Pyreg. Helmut is the founder and chief technical officer, and Robert serves as the chief sales officer. Is that correct, gentlemen?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Excellent. So before we get into Pyreg's technology package, why don't we get to know the two of you? I'm curious what got you interested in biochar and the pyrolysis biochar space, and when was that?
Yeah, I would start with myself. I finished my degree in mechanical engineering in 1999 at the University of Bingen and stepped into a research project where with a gasification plant where I was this time the guy who cared about the gas engine, so the piston engine. And there were a lot of problems with this gasification unit, and we were not so happy with the feedstock itself because it was like a wood chip gasifier, and we already knew that wood chips might not be the most interesting feedstock, and we wanted to switch to biomass waste like husk and all this green waste, which is readily available and has also a waste problem with it. And so I started, after finishing this project in 2001, thinking about doing something else with this biomass. And also I were aware in this time of this Terra Preta thing, which already was in the media, and my university is very small. We have an agricultural institute there, and we talk while we are having meals with each other, and just I was aware about this Terra Preta thing. And so I decided together with my professor, we should do something, a machine which produces biochar, charcoal, out of waste biomass. So this was the first approach, the first idea, and I think it was like 2003 or 4. I picked up the phone and called Professor Dr. Zech, who was in the Bayreuth University in Germany, and he was more or less the supervisor of the PhD of Johannes Lehmann, who was this time already in Cornell University, and also Professor Dr. Bruno Glaser, who stayed in Germany. They studied together, and he led me to Professor Glaser, and we did the first research project together with Terra Preta. Because Lehmann wasn't available, he was in the States already.
Yeah.
And for those who do not know, Professor Lehmann was already also one of the founders of the IBI. And this was my step into the biochar and Terra Preta world. And I left the university after 10 years of research out of these research projects and made a spin-off into a private-based company. And now we are on the market for, we sold the first machine to Hans-Peter Schmidt, and he was working for Delinat Institute and Swiss Biochar in 2010. And I think Hans-Peter Schmidt is known. He's now Ithaca Institute, and he was the founder of the European Biochar Certificate, and which is now merged into Carbon Standards in Switzerland. That's more or less how things started. And meanwhile, the company has 85 employees, and one of them is sitting next to me. That's Robert Kovac. And maybe, Robert, you can talk maybe 2-3 points about you.
Sure. Completely different path to come to Pyreg. Prior to 2018, I didn't know anything about biochar, pyrolysis, carbonization, and the benefits. I was working in a different industry, which is packaging for food service and commercial food processors. And one of the biggest challenges was reducing their carbon footprint and how are they going to achieve their goals, and a problem with waste disposal and what they were going to do with this waste. So by chance, I came upon the Pyreg technology at the time, and through the next 3 years, basically, was working directly, had met Helmut and the team here on starting some projects with my clients globally to explore what could they do in order to reduce their carbon footprint, how could they address the waste challenges that they were experiencing, and quite frankly became so enamored with the technology, ended up presenting many times together with Pyreg to those customers, and then finally in April of this year decided that the direction that this industry is heading and the benefits that biochar and carbonization bring are something that I wanted to be a part of and came on board with the team.
That's great. That's a great story. The love affair was consummated.
Robert is starting our business now in the US, so we maybe you can. It's more or less your
No, that's. I mean, it's a great introduction point too. As you can imagine, American living and working in Germany now for the past almost 15 years. That connection with the U.S. I've had that over the past 15 years of my business career, and as we are seeing the demand in the marketplace and the resonance of biochar, its ability to solve this carbon dioxide removal challenges that are out there, we've decided then to take a step further as well and establish Pyreg incorporated in the U.S., which we've done in April, and bring number one, our sales, service, and support directly to our customers there, but more importantly, to expand and to meet the demands of the market in the U.S. marketplace.
Excellent. Great history. And it sure seems like Pyreg is a growing company. And it also seems that I have been mispronouncing this.
If you pronounce it in English, you would say Pyreg, but we say in German Pyreg.
Pyreg is fine.
We'll go with Pyreg for the henceforth. What's the name from? I'm curious.
It's the name from, when you have these scientific projects, then they need a short name, like an acronym.
Yeah.
So it was called Pyreg, which is regenerative feedstock pyrolysis, or this was just putting words together in 5 minutes. And because the name was in the world more or less, and this type of pyrolysis was named Pyreg, so we took the name. That's it, more or less.
Well, it sure seems like Pyreg is a growing company. And I wonder, based on perusing your website, I see, 7 noteworthy installations located across the world. I'm willing to bet there are more than what is listed on the website.
Yes.
Yeah, could you tell me?
Yeah, we have more than 50 installations. Some are on the way in commissioning, but it's more than 50. And the countries are obviously Germany and Austria and Switzerland, but then later also Sweden, Norway, Czech Republic, Belgium, China, India, and now also the United States. The first delivery was 2010 to the Swiss Biochar. And the oldest machine, which is still in operation, is the machine we delivered 2011 to Austria. And this was the machine of the company called Sonnenerde. So Gerald Dunst was quite known in the Terra Preta world.
And in continuous operation since 2011.
Yes. Now it's getting old, so we are talking about replacements and so on. Or maybe I know the company needs a bigger one. But the oldest one still in operation is from 2011.
Yeah, that's quite a long run. And I mean, presumably, whatever engineering hiccups, these have all been solved by this point in time. Yeah,
we never had problems. I think everyone who is working with high temperatures and pyrolysis and gets in the same technical problems. So it's not easy. It's a lot of work. Some of these things you only learn over longer run times, like what is high temperature corrosion after 5 years. If you think about running the machine for 10 years,
yes,
and some of the results you only get after longer run times. So that's it's a long process, and the machine, we're trying to make it better every day. So that's what we do.
Yeah, and we've been calculating and tracking those results, and the proof is in why you have those systems in place. And approximately 90,000 tons of CO2 has been sequestered as a result of those Pyreg systems being in operation since 2011. And we estimate that annually, as that obviously amount grows, that we will be exceeding by the end of this year around the rate of 30,000 tons of CO2 sequestered per year.
Nice to have those metrics. In so much as it's great to collect the data, but it's also good when you look at it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So tell me, what niche of the pyrolysis biochar space would you say is unique to Pyreg?
I think what is unique is so we have a continuous process, and the machine was engineered as a, let's say, multi-fuel machine out of these wood chip gasifiers where I was not so happy with. So we can obviously process wood chips, but we also can use sewage sludges and all type of waste residues from agricultural and forestry and so on. But also we have also, like in China, we have one machine which is completely processing on waste. So it's processing plastic waste. The outcome is also char. I wouldn't call it biochar, but this is also possible. And that's one of the big advantages of the system. And we integrated very efficient and very clean pyrolysis gas burner, which is a flameless oxidation system, which I used 15 years ago already. And this is helps us really to fulfill the really strict regulations of emission limits in California, like we have the sewage sludge machine in California, and also in the European Union. There are very strict regulations. If you are in an industrial scale of biochar production, you have to fulfill these laws of waste incineration. And I think this is one of the points of which we can bring into.
Yeah, for sure. And Helmut's already discussed the long-lasting technology when you heard, units being in service for over a decade. But the other claim to fame or advantages is the units are decentralized. So rather than being in a situation where you have to bring the biomass to a location, which increases the carbon footprint further, it has additional costs because you're trying to transport this waste. Because of the modular design, you can place the Pyreg units at the source of the biomass, thereby, if you will, eliminating those transport costs and allowing flexibility for the customer to place the units at the specific location where the biomass or that residue or waste is located.
So this was the approach from the beginning on in the discussion with Hans-Peter Schmidt and the EBC. We need decentralized plants which are like small or mid-scale because the biomass is spread over the area, and it doesn't make too much sense to build one big plant and then transport material from elsewhere because then you have carbon dioxide emissions also while transportation. So we focused on the smaller size and mid-size machines, which means we started over in Europe with the machine we call P500. That's 100 kilograms of, for example, wood chips per hour and as an input feedstock. And now we are in the bigger system, which we launched 2 years ago, which is we call it P1500. And this is like 300 kilograms of dry wood chips per hour, for example. These installations are container based, so we don't have too much work on the site, so we can completely manufacture them here at our site and then transport these containers on the side of the customer. And then it's a little bit like Tetris, just putting things together, and commissioning should be quite quickly.
Yeah, we have some videos out there of showing the modularity of the system, basically being delivered in kind of, as a Helmut said, in Lego blocks and being the modules put together. But when we talk about size or footprint, keep in mind that we're talking about units that are roughly the size of a three-car garage.
I'd like to hear this. If we could dig a little deeper on the modularity concept, what I'm gathering is that, one module is the pyrolysis module, another module is feedstock handling, for instance, and maybe another module is biochar handling, something on those lines.
Exactly. It's like pyrolysis module, then combustion chamber module, then all the fans,
Ventilation and
ventilation.
yeah.
Okay.
Then we have the heat extraction, like whatever the customer needs, like it could be hot water or it can be also steam or hot oil or whatever. So this is one module, and everything is in like container-based footprint.
Okay. And when you say container, it's a 20-foot or a 40-foot, I guess. I don't know what size they have in Europe.
It was really these ISO containers, 20-foot containers in the past, but 5 years ago we decided to go to a larger unit which is a little bit wider. It's 3 meters wide, and it's the unit, at least in Europe, you can transport without any issues on the street.
Yeah.
So it's the widest unit you can transport. It's a little bit a problem now with shipping to the US. So because they on the ships they have this container, typical ISO container footprint, but we are working on this at the moment.
Mm-hmm. When I think of containerized units, I think of a shipping container with items packaged inside of it. And what I've seen of your units, it almost looks like it's a shipping container size frame. And the side panels come off, yeah?
Yeah, it's a frame.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's only the frame, and we mount everything inside. And in the past, we really started with containers and took out, the parts of the floor and then installation and so on. But it doesn't make too much sense. So we have our own frames, which are built for us, but they have these sizes, and also they have the container connections on the edges.
Yeah, the connection points in the corners.
Yeah.
Neat. And so, just to nail this one down, the reactor itself is not decomposable into smaller units. I'm thinking of some of these others that I've seen where, it's this container can hold up to 5 pyrolysis reactors, and you purchase, 1 through 5, depending on how much feedstock.
Yeah. We have modules with one reactor. The typical module has 2 reactors.
Okay.
And we are planning, so we have that's the actual unit, and we are at the moment engineering a unit which is bigger, and this unit has 8 reactors. It will still be container based, and that's more or less, I think, the biggest we at the moment are thinking of, and this is bigger than the one I introduced earlier. This will be the P6000, we call it. And this will take up to around 10,000 tons of wood chips, dry solids a year. So that's the biggest unit which we will sell next year.
Yeah.
Okay, so modularity in both the components and the reactor piece for scaling.
Yeah.
Yes.
But always one combustion chamber. Only one combustion chamber.
Neato.
Yeah.
And then presumably that combustion chamber will be able to support up to...
It's the combustion chamber of the big unit will have up to 4 megawatts of heat inside.
Okay, I'm fully satisfied. Thanks so much for your patience there. If we could maybe move over into the nuts and bolts of it. These reactors, they're slow pyrolysis, continuously fed, heated by combustion of the gaseous and liquid products using a flux burner, a flameless oxidation burner. Solids are conveyed with a screw, with an auger from start to finish.
Yeah.
And I also see in the website literature that autothermal processes are also mentioned. From that, I gather that you're introducing some quantity of oxygen to to handle heat requirements for drying, maybe? Or
It's always this discussion where we set the frame, because the reactor itself, it's allothermal, because we heat it from the outside with our combustion gases, the exhaust gases. But the process itself, when it started, it's autothermal because it works with itself without any added thermal energy. So the reactor itself, if you take only the reactor, it mainly is allothermal, so we heat from the outside, but we also introduce a little bit of air. So it's a mix. There's some air which we introduce into the pyrolysis just to use this exothermal processes to a point. But this is also one advantage, because we heat it from the outside with our exhaust gas. We can use wetter feedstocks also.
yeah. I mean, is that what allows such feedstock flexibility? Being able to tune how much oxygen is introduced, which will create, I don't know, greater quantity of combustible products?
Yeah, that's what the machine was engineered for, because you, as you know, get in trouble if the heating value is too low. So you have to not enough, or you have too much water in it. Or maybe like take the sewage sludge. Some sludges only have like 10, 12 megajoules, because they are mainly containing minerals. And so you get in trouble with the heat stability or balance of the machine itself. So at some point it will just turn off. That's one thing you have to take care, and then it's very good you introduce some air to get the exothermal reaction a little bit higher, and also take heat from the combustion and heat your feedstock and dry it and help pyrolysis. That's one point. And the second point is, if you use feedstocks like sewage sludge with a really high ash content, you have to take care about the melting temperatures of these ashes, because you also have things inside which just come along with a low melting point of these ashes. And that's also one thing we care about, that the temperature in the screw reactor is monitored, and we can also control it.
Yeah, Helmut, I think you read my mind. I was just about to ask about operating parameter limitations based on feedstock. And so, presumably, if there's high ash content or high content of what, potassium and sodium,
Yeah.
then you would run the process a little cooler.
Exactly. So if we we have companies running them on paper sludges or husk material, or like sewage sludges, sometimes it's better to go on this lower temperatures, even with sewage sludge, because if you run on higher temperatures, the phosphorus will just get in I don't know, in a special phase which is not available to plants. So if you heat the phosphorus higher than 700 degrees Celsius, you get in problems. You will not get any fertilizer out of the machine. And so it's important to run it on lower temperatures. And you should be able to do this. And also we have customers who want to run it on higher temperatures, maybe using wood chip material and so on, because they want to have special behavior of their biochars, like maybe more a surface area or whatever.
Very good. We've covered most of what I was curious about regarding feedstock. I mean, the units are super capable. It sounds like there are really no feedstock limitations other than too much moisture is obviously an issue, but that can be worked around by drying. And these units have capacity for drying feedstock.
Almost everything, when I was in the university and I had this different prototypes, we put anything inside which we found, from slaughterhouse waste to paper mill waste to plastics to rubber, tire rubber and whatever, which has nothing to do with biomass, just to know what happens. So we don't do this anymore. We don't have any customer who runs it on tires, but it's possible.
Is feedstock grinding also included? Is there a module for milling feedstock?
No, we don't provide it normally. We can just we know companies on the market who do this.
I mean, it's at the end of the day, with the experience and the amount of installations, how what we deliver to our customers is starts with what their requests are, and as Helmut said, at the end of the day, we're an engineering and manufacturer of carbonization systems, but with the experience and the knowledge of knowing what our consumers need, we have partners as well. So, there's ancillary equipment like shredders and dryers and, big bag systems, whatever. And then we have our partners that we work with that will take that component of the installation, and then it's, managed by us, but with partners.
Sure, sure. Sounds good. So, yeah, obviously part of the consultation process, and you are providing a complete solution.
Yeah, for example, like if you have to take a wastewater treatment plant, and we did one project now in Germany, and they wanted to have the dewatering, all this equipment you need to transport the sewage sludge. Then you need the dryer, you need the Pyreg unit, then you need container, big bag station, whatever, and all the heat extraction. And we have a general contractor where he delivered all this, but the main unit is the Pyreg unit.
So on to location or situation. Is it possible to say that there's a profile for the best owner operator of your system? This is a difficult question, right? This is like asking, what sort of char yield can you get out of your unit? Well, that's a function of operating parameters and the feedstock and so on and so on. And these units are super flexible and super capable and easily transportable. So is it just the world is your oyster, or is there like a best location?
Maybe from a technical side, Helmut can describe that better. But from a customer profile standpoint, it's what their pain or their needs are, and how much can they extract from the value of the system. And I'll explain it very simply. If the customer has a biomass problem where they're paying a lot for that biomass waste to be hauled away, as we talked about earlier, there could be penalties or fines associated with not disposing of that biomass properly. That's one. Two, if they have an end use, or they've already looked at how they're going to close the loop with the resulting biochar, basically saying, okay, I know I've got this biomass, I want to convert it into biochar, and then I know what the end use of that biochar is. That's the second point. The third is the need for green energy. How can they utilize that energy that we're generating from the Pyreg system? That's part of that model or business model for them. And then, I would say, one of the last points is the topic of CO2 reduction credits or corks. If that's something that by closing the loop, now that we have that system there for the CO2 reduction credits, if that customer fits the profile and says, yes, I need all of those things, or I have that as part of my model, then that would be perfect. And I'm talking from a business standpoint. Now, from a technical standpoint, it could, of course, be different based on where they're located and what type of feedstock that they will be using.
Yeah. So I think it best fits like we have customers, they have a waste problem, and we have one customer, he's in the pharmaceutical industry, and they are making extraction of plants, and these extraction materials they sell to other pharmaceutical people and making, let's say, drugs out of it. And then they have a residue, which is this plant material, which was extracted with alcohol, so nothing bad about it. And it's a very clean material, and it's on the positive list of the EBC also, so you can use it. And they are running into problems because now they have to pay for the disposal of this material, this change in the last years. And then there's a win-win situation. They can use it as a feedstock, and they had to pay pay for disposal, but now they are really making value out of waste. So this upcycling approach in the best way, taking a waste and making a product biochar out of waste. That's the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
And they're solving their waste problem, and obviously they're making some profit with it.
Yeah, I mean, you have the disposal cost avoidance. So that, first is the cost avoidance. Secondly, you have the biochar itself and the value that brings if that's sold, and then obviously, used and placed into the soil. And then, the third is that green energy component of it. And then lastly, the carbon credits.
And if you take this as special customer, he also needs lots of energy, so thermal energy, because they have to run the extraction process. And they created this thermal energy by using CNG, so fossil fuel. Now they can use something which they make from their waste, and that's the best win-win situation.
Right, someone that's poised to integrate all the materials and energy.
Yeah.
And be able to make some money, because it's funding is always important, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, on that note, I wonder, is it possible to box this all in, minimum to maximum feedstock quantity requirement and operating costs? So the smallest, simplest of your units, how much feedstock do you need to supply? What would it cost installed? All the way to the sky's the limit, your largest unit.
Well, I mean, first of all, and I'm not skirting the question, but it does depend on the application itself. And obviously, as Helmut said, we have different units in the family, and we'll add this last unit, the PX6000, because the need for units that can process more feedstock per year has grown. So, what was a request maybe years ago to say we've got 1,000 tons a year now is we've got 10,000 tons of biomass a year, and hence the development of a larger system and economies of scale in that larger system, to say instead of having to have 5 or 6 units to be able to have one at a particular location. But I think what I've learned, at least in seeing the return on investment, is that the units are sized to the application, and that the customers are seeing excellent return on investments that are certainly less than 5 years. And this is why I think your leading question about what's the optimal customer, when they can reap the benefits of using that biomass as their fuel, the green energy, they can use the biochar, they have the resulting corks, and potentially having avoidance, that return on investment model becomes even better, because they're, if you will, pulling all 4 levers, as opposed to saying, all I want to do is get rid of waste. Well, that's pulling only 1 lever. But if you pull all 4 levers, that return on investment for our system, is much better.
I like that analogy. So, yes, of course, it's a complicated situation. I'm going to bounce the ping pong ball back. In my notes, I see 100 kilos an hour of dry feedstock. Is that the smallest unit?
Yeah.
And the P6000, the largest unit, is roughly 10 times that. Does that sound right?
Yeah, roughly, yes.
Okay. And cost, I mean, geez, it's impossible to nail a number down, so I'll skip that.
It's just a matter of scale. So, bigger comes with a lower specific cost. Yeah, we learned this demand for bigger systems when we entered the Scandinavian market. I think it was we delivered the machine for the Stockholm Biochar project 4 or 5 years ago. And we learned that in this Scandinavian region, the forestry industry is far bigger than in Middle Europe, like Germany, Austria.
Sure.
And they have just bigger masses of woody material there, and it's the same in the United States and
US.
in Canada.
Yes.
We don't in Germany. We don't have this big forestry industry, and that's one reason, because there was a demand for bigger systems. While we decided to just make one. That's
Right.
what we do at the moment.
And there was one item that I had just remembered. What infrastructure is required on site to support these reactors? Electric supply?
Yeah, it's like electrical supply. We need water
Sure.
supply, so pressurized water, because we like, I think the most of the biochar companies put a little bit of water on the biochar to avoid dust and self-ignition also. And what we also need is obviously a chimney and all this. We need a shredded material upfront. And what we also would need is we need a gas supply for the start burner. So it can be CNG or LNG or biogas or anything, but we have to start up the machine with a start burner, which runs maybe half a day, and then the machine runs on itself when it's hot enough.
And think of it as, again, in terms of modularity. Imagine that, the building site is prepped, the concrete slab is in place, whatever building structure. You're talking about basic utilities, right? The gas just to initially start the unit, the water, as Helmut said, for the quenching of the biochar as it exits the Pyreg machine, and obviously the electricity that you need for the ventilation systems and the lighting for the unit. But that's basically it. I try to think of it as, almost like an RV, when it goes to a campground and you have the hookups there. Maybe that's not the best analogy, but it's, basic utilities. You're not talking about, any kind of major modifications to hook up the unit. And in the installation period, I think the modularity, again, we're talking about when those pieces are delivered and the site is prepped properly, that we're talking a week or so to have that unit up and running at the site. So that, again, is a major consideration of the modularity when the system pieces get delivered and our service technicians are on site for a week or two, as opposed to months or more.
Something which we think it's good to do is putting something like a roof on top of it, or it can be it can be open on the sides. But that's what we learned with our Swiss customer in the first years. They have lots of snow, and then it's not so good idea if you if you want to visit your machine, you have to take the shovel and put 2 meters of snow away. So it's better to put it under something.
Right. Well, that handles all of the questions that I had in mind. I wonder if there's anything that I missed that you gentlemen would like to touch on.
I think not. Maybe I missed before that we are the founding members of the European Biochar Industry Consortium, which is called IBI. Sorry for stealing a little bit of your name. So I'm one of the founding members and a member of the board. And yeah, we have also a growing number of members now. I think we are around 50 at the moment in Europe. And we're working strongly together with the European Biochar certificate colleagues to get a strong certificate in Europe and quality control and so on, because there are, as you know, huge differences in biochar, and there are huge differences how it is or it was generated. And while we are in this climate discussion, I think we really should look into the how we generate this biochar, because if you just burn down some woody material and you let fumes go out in the atmosphere, you don't do anything for the climate. So that's something we will have a certificate also for the machinery in Europe, that you only get the EBC stamp if you can prove that you fulfill limits for emissions and so on, and you prove that your carbon dioxide from the fossil fuels like electricity and startup gas are very low and so on. You have also you will have to have a usage of the heat and so on.
Okay, so not just a biochar certificate, but a biochar and production certificate.
Yeah, they call it Biochar System Certificate.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that sounds like right off the bat that would set you up for carbon credit. On that note, I'm just going to say thank you. I've really enjoyed the chat here today. And again, I mean, I wish I had piles of biomass, and I think I just need to start looking for piles of biomass and a pile of cash and some good business ideas because as this matures, it just gets harder and harder to, I don't know, not get my hands dirty or something like that. But thank you very much for your time. That was super informative, and I enjoyed our time together.
We did as well. Thank you,
Thank
Akio.
you.